Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Seeing the Light. I'm Bruce O'Donnell, and today I'm talking about my favorite lens. And that lens is the Canon 70-200 f2.8 version 2. Now I bought this lens about 6 or 7 years ago when it first came out, and it quickly became my favorite. I love landscapes, I love portraits, and I rarely do a portrait using a focal length shorter than 70 millimeters, and longer is better for portraits. With landscapes, I typically am shooting a panoramic, and I would say that the 70-200 fits that bill about 75% of the time. So it's perfect for my needs. What isn't perfect is the size and the weight. Now I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I've got to carry around less weight if I can. And size-wise, this lens will fit in my bag if I take the lens hood off. But I'm a big fan of the lens hoods. Why are we spending thousands of dollars on equipment and then not shading our lens? We're going to get better color saturation if we do, so it doesn't really make sense for me to leave that at home. So I finally thought, let's try and solve this problem. So I went and bought the 70-200 f4. I bought a used one. I figured, well, I didn't want to spend a lot of money because if it's just size and weight, but the quality's not there, that kind of defeats the purpose. So today, I'm going to take out both these lenses and shoot an identical panoramic with them. I'll come back, stitch them together, and compare them head to head. I'll let the images speak for themselves. If this has the quality, it goes in my bag. If it doesn't have the quality, maybe one of you will buy it. Now the weather is rainy and overcast, and that's perfect for the scene that I have picked out to photograph. So let me pack these up and we'll be on our way. You gotta like that, huh? All right, headed back to one of my favorite spots, Wormslow State Park. I got a feeling you guys are gonna see a lot of this place. I'm gonna be doing a panoramic photograph. So I'm gonna be shooting at 200 millimeters in the vertical position, and I'm guessing that's probably 3 or 4 images wide. So again, we're gonna start with the 70-200 f4 non-image stabilized Canon lens, and this is the lightest lens, the most simple lens in this category that they make. Let's get underway and see what we find out. Okay, so we've got our series with both lenses. Let's head back and we'll take a look. Okay, I've got both the panoramics we did stitched together and loaded up in Photoshop. Before we take a look at those, I just want to say one thing about the post-processing that I did. I kept it to a very minimum, and whatever I did to one image, I did to the other in the exact amount, just so we keep a true comparison going. So let's take a look at what we got and see what we learn. All right, this image was taken at the very end of my test. I had a quick opportunity to get a series with the gate open. This is with the f2.8. I don't have a comparable with the f4, but I wanted to show you this one just so you can kind of get a view of what it looks like looking down that avenue of oaks. So here are the panoramics we did. The top one obviously is the f4 and the bottom one is the f2.8. Now both of these were done at f11, and the focus was on the date up there on the arch where you see the 1913. So I focused on that with autofocus, then switched it to manual focus so that the entire time there'd be one focal plane when I did this panoramic. Now originally when I did it there was 9 images, and after I stitched them together I cropped them down, so we're looking at about 6 to 7, somewhere between 6 and 7 of the images stitched together. The first thing I noticed when I looked at these was the color. The f4 is a little more neutral, the f2.8 lens is a little warmer. I don't really consider that an issue, and as a matter of fact I actually prefer the f4 version of this because it is more neutral, it is more, I think, truer to what I saw when I was out there photographing. I like a little cooler temperature when I'm doing woodlands photography here because I like the color that the leaves are. If you get too warm, it's very easy to get the image, especially when you go to print. It takes on a yellowish cast. But again, I don't really think that's, I think it's a non-issue. So the other thing you might notice is that the f2.8 image appears a little darker, and I just want to say that that is not because of the lens, it's because of the shifting light conditions. It was overcast, and I did not change my exposure to accommodate that. But I want to point that out. Again, that has nothing to do with the lens. You know, overall, 2 really comparable images. But let's take a closer look at some of the other detail. Here is a little greater magnification of that image, and this is approximately what one frame would have been. I don't see a lot of difference. The f2.8 might have a little more contrast, but it's not significant. They're both sharp, really good contrast. At this magnification, I really don't see much of anything that stands out as one over the other. All right, let's go into some even finer detail. This is really cropping in on some of the finer details so we can kind of get a look at what's going on. And as you can see, when we really zoom in on those dates, I do think the f2.8 is a little crisper, but I think there is a slight edge to the f2.8 lens on resolution. All right, I know that was kind of a quick visual look. I could say for myself that the f4 definitely held its own against the 2.8 for landscape photography, and I know that I'm not going to hesitate to put it in my bag. When I think about the weight and the size, I really think it's going to be my travel lens. I'll still use the 2.8 for times when I can drive up to a location, and you know, actually a location just like this where I know I can drive up, it's a 10-minute walk, it's not that big of a deal, I probably would take it. But when I travel, I'll definitely be taking my f4. It's a great lens for landscape, and I'm really pleased with the results I've got. But there's more than just landscape photography to consider in terms of if this is the lens for use. So let's head over to the studio. I'll grab both lenses and let's just do kind of a wrap up and talk about some of the other functions and uses that you would have for a 70-200, and you know, what I see are some of the pros and cons of both. So let's head over there and we'll wrap this thing up. So what we've seen so far is that both these lenses are very capable of excellent results for landscape photography. But you may be thinking, I do more than landscape photography. So let's talk about some of the other functions that a 70-200 might be good for. You might be thinking, I do portraiture, or I do sports photography, or I do wildlife photography, and I want to think about, are these good lenses for that, or which one would be best for that? So let's first talk about sports photography. I don't do sports photography. Wildlife photography, I do a lot of that. Either planned or I come across it. And for that, I typically will reach for my 300 f4 IS lens. So neither one of these lenses would be my primary choice for doing wildlife photography. But occasionally I have used them depending on the scene. Recently I took a trip to Arizona and I got some great bird shots using the f4 lens. I didn't want to pack the heavy lens. I was carrying my camera gear on the plane, and so I went with the lighter lens. It just wouldn't be my primary lens for wildlife photography. The other category is portraiture. Now, what kind of portraiture do you do? Do you do studio portraiture? Do you do outdoor portraiture? I do very little studio portraiture anymore. If I were doing studio portraiture, I would pick the f4 lens. The reason is I'm typically going to be using studio flash. I'm going to have my camera on a tripod, so speed is not an issue. I don't need image stabilization. What I do more of these days is outdoor portraiture. And for that, I would pick the 2.8. If that's what you do, it gives you the image stabilization. It has the f2.8, which although I don't personally shoot at 2.8, I know a lot of people do. I'm more like 3.5 is about as fast as I want to open up. And primarily I'm concerned about, I want a really sharp face, the eyes, the nose. And so I want some depth of field. And I will typically for portraiture use the longest focal length I can get away with the composition that I've chosen. So with that in mind, when I'm doing outdoor portraitures, speed is a factor. Image stabilization definitely is a factor because I'm going to be using it handheld or a monopod. So what have I learned by testing both these lenses head to head? I learned that the f4 does not give up anything in terms of quality. I am very happy with the results I get in landscape photography with this. It weighs less, it takes up less room, it costs less than the f2.8. So it's earned a position in my camera bag. The 2.8, I love this lens. I'm not going to pack it far, but if I'm doing portraiture or if I know that I'm going to be able to drive up to a location and shoot, I might take that. Now, if you like the idea of having the smaller, lighter lens, but you really need the image stabilization, Canon makes that lens too. And Canon just announced their version 2 of the 70-200 f4 image stabilized lens. Maybe wait till the end of the month and see what the specifications are for their newest lens, what is their price, and put that in your mix and figure out, is that in my budget? I hope the comparison of these two lenses has answered some of your questions. I know it has for me. I am now very confident when I take out the 70-200, it's more than capable of delivering excellent results. And not second guessing myself is huge. If you still have questions that I can answer, feel free to leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you soon. I'd encourage you to get out there and do your own experiments. There's nothing like learning it yourself to give you the confidence that when you see the light unfolding on the beauty of creation, you're going to get the results you want. So until next time, all the best. Oh, shoot.